Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android. We recommend Spotify. Also, check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel for content across the South Florida sports spectrum. That includes Miami Dolphins camp, where I was actually at the past couple of days. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. $2.99 per month. Link right here in the description. Place you want to go for the most heat information and conversation. Stay there with these months with us because that's where we get to know you. Then we're going to bombard you with content once we hit September, October. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. Also check out insurancebyLynette.com. I always do this the wrong way. Our friendly face there. You can follow her on all of our Heat content because she's a huge Heat fan, but also she can help you get car insurance, life insurance, renter's insurance, homeowners insurance, and more. It's 954-581-8800. That's 954-581-8800. A Aggressive Insurance Agency, insurancebyLynette.com. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. Norm Powell is a member of the Miami Heat. We've told you that before. You know this by now. It's getting rave reviews around the NBA media. Essentially, the Heat stole him. There's really no other way to look at a trade like that other than to say that. But as we had some time to process this, and as Norm now has a number, it's his old number. It's 24. Haywood Highsmith is moving to number 8. And he's been posting a lot of stuff about the grind and everything else related to that on his Instagram. Greg and I wanted to talk about some of the other sort of things that Powell represents for this team. And so this is another topic that came from Off the Floor. Pieces of it did. And I'll start. We'll kind of go back and forth on this. I'll begin with this. Do I think this makes the Heat a contender this year? No. So that's not what I'm saying. Alex and I just did a podcast where we put the Heat in the third 3-team tier in the Eastern Conference. We could have argued for the back end of the second tier, but still somewhere in that mix. I think without Powell, we probably would have had them lower. But we're not elevating them to the first tier or anything like that. But I do think that it makes them more competitive, and it also makes them more flexible going forward with some things that are on the horizon. But here's where I want to start with it, and then again, we'll go back and forth. Norm Powell is a late bloomer. He's 32 years old. This is not typically the age where the Heat acquire players. You think of guys like Jimmy, being 35, not 35 when they got him. He hadn't turned 30 yet. There's a history of the Heat acquiring 29-year-old point guards. Goran Dragic was one of them. Tim Hardaway was one of them. Terry Rozier was one of them. In fact, I tried to make the case that the Rozier thing might work because Hardaway and Dragic worked, but of course it did not. Even Shaq. Shaq was, I believe, was he 31 when they got him? I don't think he was quite right 32. Around there. Yeah. Is that? Yeah, I believe that's correct. And then you take a look at, obviously, LeBron was 25 at the time. Bosh was 25 at the time, turning 26. So this idea that they always go after the aging star, yes, they've tried for Durant numerous times. Not really true, right?
And Jimmy was 29.
29.
Okay, I didn't know if he made it to 30 before they signed him. Got it. So this is it's an interesting. Norm is a bit older than that, when we talk about 32 and the late bloomer part of it. What intrigues me is that he seemed to he's got a level that he's got to. I'm looking at his stats just through let's say 2020 or 2021. he's reached a level, but now he's even gotten better in these later years. And you would think it's like kind of the back end of his prime. So it's intriguing. And the big thing for me, the reason why I like the move, and like you said, it was a slam dunk. Like they gave up nothing and they got a player that's going to be, if nothing else, an offensive lever that they did not have, that they desperately need. But for me, like what really intrigues me is to see how he fits, because he's playing for an extension. And so I just know that the way that he played last season, if he replicates that kind of thing in Miami, it just makes for just interesting options for the team moving forward. And so I just think him being incentivized to make it work, to play his best, and to be his best version of himself, that usually trends when guys have that going into a career in Miami, Ethan, it usually means that they're maximized and they look good. So I'm intrigued by what that means for them moving forward. There's other implications we're going to get to later as to why that is intriguing, but just the fact that you have a guy motivated to play really well for you, when you just had a guy kind of taking one-legged threes and, moping around in a season, it's refreshing, I'll say.
Was going to be one of mine as well. It's a guy who wants to be here. I think that is something that Heat fans can look forward to. It's not just that, he idolized Dwayne, but he seems to sort of get what they're about. We saw the picture with him and Spoelstra out in Vegas. Also, he sat with the Heat group. I was at that Summer League game. He sat with the Heat group, which was Spoelstra and Simon and Caron Butler and others on the baseline. He was with some people from his own group, but also with the Heat. So, yeah, he's somebody that wants to be here. That's something we're questioning about Andrew Wiggins, by the way. So the fact that Powell was acquired, and although he was surprised by it, I think maybe a little frustrated that the Clippers didn't value him enough to keep him. Now, you understand why the Clippers did what they did, because Beal becomes available. They get Beal cheaper, and they were able to bring in John Collins. And, again, that team is going to be ancient, but Norm didn't necessarily make them younger. But they're basically they were going a different direction there. And so they decided, okay, Beal can replace a lot of what Powell did for them. But I want to mention the late bloomer thing here again, and in another context of what this represents. Norm Powell didn't start more than 26 games until the 2021 season. He was already 27 years old. In his first season with Toronto, and there were mixed results on these Toronto teams, by the way. His first season in Toronto, he was 22 when he came into the NBA. He averaged 5.6 points. He started 24 games. Then he started 18, 3. That was in the championship season, by the way. 60 games. He was part of that team, came off the bench, averaged 8.6 points. Then he sort of broke out in the pre-COVID season, the season that was interrupted by COVID, and ended up in the bubble. Averaged 16. He hasn't averaged anything lower than 13.9 since. All the other seasons were over 16. The 13.9 season was with the Clippers, and it was just a matter of minutes, actually. And he was actually 4th in the league in 6th man of the year voting. So, again, this is a player who has continued to ascend over time. Doesn't mean that will go on into the future, but he doesn't have a ton of wear on him from earlier seasons. There's not a lot of long playoff runs. I always look at this. This was one of the things with Jimmy why I thought he could be more effective maybe in Miami than people thought, even though he led the league in minutes and Tibbs wore him out. But he didn't have a lot of long playoff runs in previous stops with the Clippers.
And those are really physically grueling, to your point. You know what I mean?
Much more so in a lot of ways. And I'm looking at the playoff numbers, and here, if I can call them up here, because I should have had this up before. I don't think playoff series. He's played 91 playoff games. I mean, it's not a small number. His teams have won 9 of those series, but it's 17 series, and he's 32 years old. That's not a huge number of playoff series. So there's enough playoff experience in there. Obviously, there's finals experience in there, which is a plus 2. There's championship experience in there, but there's not. Again, these long runs year after year after year after year that wear on him. So I think that's
high usage, to your point too.
At high usage, exactly. And so the usage has been increasing over the past couple of seasons. Plus, you can tell if you watch him, just his social media and IG and everything, he's a workout fiend. Like, he is there doing this. I mean, he's printed T-shirts about the grind. Okay, like, this is the type of player that they normally want. But also, the thing that I take from this is that if you look at the Heat's current players, there are examples here. I think he can set an example for some of these guys. Norm Powell was not an immediate star. It took him some time to get to a level where people considered him to be a borderline all-star last year. He didn't really have anything handed to him at any point. It was not considered to be a big acquisition when he went to the Clippers. He was traded, I believe, for Gary Trent Jr. When the Toronto-Portland trade. I think that's how that played out. So this is not. This is more of a
2 years have
grind.
done a lot for his like standing in the league. I think what he's done in LA specifically has kind of elevated him into like you said, he was in this sixth man of the year or even all-star consideration last year. So like this is where we're probably getting him at his best moment of his career, I would think.
And can he set an example, Greg, for others who maybe late bloomers on this team? They have, like I look at a guy like Hawkins was a first-round pick, right? But we said, okay, he's kind of fully formed when he came in, right? That was the concern. In the second year, it looked like it. Well, maybe not. Maybe Norm Powell wasn't fully formed. I know Ware and Jovic were more, upside picks, but I do think there is an example to be set. And I just have a feeling, based on his personality, I've talked to Toronto writers about him. I've talked to Portland writers about him. They are very positive about him and what he sort of brings to the table on a daily basis. I'm not just talking about with the media. He's good with the media, but I'm saying in general and what he brings to the organization. I think Spo's going to lean on him a lot. I think he's going to lean on him as one of his core leaders this season.
That's huge. I mean, to put that in perspective, I mean, to come into Miami and in your first season for Spoelstra to lean in that direction, that would be a huge development. And I think like another part of this is everybody wants to see, because we all know that kind of Bam and Tyler are good players and they can be part of winning teams, but neither one of them are like the 1A guys, right? And
Right.
Norm Powell's not that either, but what can he do in relation to those two other guys, like playing with them, particularly with Tyler in the backcourt, I think is a huge question going into this season. And to your point, if Norm Powell becomes a guy Spoelstra really trusts, that means he and Tyler are working like that.
Right.
That's inherent in that to me. And so that's intriguing to think about because it's a good season to evaluate whether you want to invest in a guy like Norm Powell. Bobby Marks speculated that maybe what the Clippers would have had to extend him at was somewhere around 3 years, $88 million, if I recall correctly, was what he mentioned. He did one of those videos on Twitter X or whatever we're calling it these days. But like, that's an interesting thing to think about Norm Powell. I know you'd be getting into his age 35 season if you did something like that. But at that number, when you see other guys with similar skill sets and similar statistics getting a lot more money in today's NBA.
Well, then people are going to start questioning us about us talking about us going young, which I understand that because there is a little bit of a contradiction there. On the other side of this, though, there is another element here with the contract, and you mentioned Tyler, so I'm going to let you lead on that one because this is the thing in the background here that I think Norm Powell also represents for this team this season. Before we get to that, though, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down your $5. You get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of 5 on the Floor and all the other content that we have here because it's simplified. It's really easy. You can go in there. You can play the flex plays again in the state of Florida. You can play everything pretty much in the state of Florida again. And of course, there's plenty of sports to play even when the NBA is not going on. So go to prizepicks.com. Use the code FIVE. Get your $50 to play right away. Great. You take the lead on this because there is a Tyler element to this for sure. I mean, we have to handle the business stuff.
Yeah, because I think everyone can acknowledge Tyler Hero and Norm Powell have relatively similar skill sets. I don't want to go too far with them being duplicative. I'm trying to get that word out. Because I think that they can play well off of each other and together. But it's more of that Tyler Hero is also extension eligible. And there's just been a lot of talk of like what what his number is going to come in at. And he even alluded to it in the press conference when he said it's just going to cost you more money if you wait. And, like that's him betting on himself. If Tyler doesn't have a great season, if he were to have a playoff where he didn't play well, do you think he could necessarily guarantee that it would cost more? No. So he's betting on himself. So you've got Norm Powell, who's playing for an extension and betting on himself in the way he's buying in and looking to really probably get his last hefty payday in the league, we'll say. And then you have Tyler, who, I think Ethan, this is going too far, but he's trying to figure out where he is in the league in terms of how close to the max can he get of what he's eligible to earn. And I just think his prototype, is there going to be a cap on what you're willing to invest in that guy long-term? And Norm Powell having a similar skill set, there can be replacement value, but also incremental value if they play well together. And it's just going to be an interesting dynamic because you got two guys motivated to get paid. And that matters in life in general, frankly.
Also, it's about getting paid and it's about respect. And this is why, to me, this is the number one issue that has to go well for them. We've talked about it. If they're going to exceed expectations, and it's the number one thing I think ultimately that Spoelstra will have to manage for this team, not necessarily for the future. I think where, Jovic, we've talked about the importance of giving them roles and seeing if they flourish and how they respond. But it is interesting because it could be really good or it could be really tense. That's just what this is about. We hear these stories about locker rooms all the time, right? That come out later about guys who are competing for money. I don't think necessarily that the Heat are pitting them against each other.
No,
I don't think that they will pit each other against each other. I don't think their personalities, based on what I know of Powell and what I've seen of Hero here since he came in 2019, will necessarily lead to that. But I think the fans will. I think if a certain segment of fans, I think if Norm is outplaying Tyler, you're going to start hearing a very loud cacophony on Twitter and some of those other spaces, Reddit, all the other places that you and I try to avoid.
Yeah.
We will start that one we avoid. When Twitter's better with another one. Go off the floor, right? People are like, Twitter's awful. I'm like, you haven't even looked at Reddit. Like that's don't look at Reddit. They hate all of us there. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know why necessarily. Maybe because I haven't hired them. Anyway, that tends to be the case. But look, it comes down to fans who have picked a side on Tyler's contract already. And so every 28-point efficient game from Norm Powell, if Tyler has a 6 for 17, it's going to be, why are you paying this guy $50 million? Right, exactly. That's where we're headed. So I do think there's going to be some of that. And also, although I think they're going to play well together, and Brady, whose opinion I trust on this much more, thinks they're going to really flow together in a way that Rozier and Tyler were never going to. And I think we all had our doubts about that before last season started. It's not natural necessarily. Neither of them is really a point guard. Norm is better off the ball, typically. His numbers on the catch are excellent. Tyler, we've been pushing for him to get more off the ball. He's heard that push last year, not from us, but from everybody. Wanted to, and then he couldn't because and he was doing a good job of it, but then Jimmy situation happened, and so he had to be more on the ball. So this is not like your typical fit. Also, neither of them is an elite defender.
Mm-hmm.
Norm, I think the hope is that he'll be average. If you talk to Clippers fans, they'll say he really wasn't last year. I think in this system he could be. Tyler, we know the struggles there just because of the physical limitations. So it's not perfect. It's a player you add because of all the attributes he brings, because of the cost, very little cost, money-wise or player cost or opportunity cost. There was really no cost here. But I do think that is the single most interesting thing to watch here from the fan base. I think, Greg, and I'll let you close it, I think the fans, they're going to pick sides when the players don't. They do this with Bam and Tyler, who are great friends. And we see there's the Bam stands and there's the Tyler stands, and never the twain shall meet. This is going to happen again in this little corner of the world we call Heat Twitter. No?
Yeah, it will. And I don't think to the casual fan they're going to necessarily get to that point, because to your earlier comment about both of these guys and their demeanor, like the professionalism, I don't think that they're going to clash even if things are going bad throughout the year. But there is, it'll just be a loud minority of social media people that kind of just talk about what does it mean to invest really big money in Tyler Hero if you can get similar production from Norm Powell or better production, depending on what that's all looking like. But I think also you have to account for what does Bam look like, and how is he utilized differently now with Jimmy in the rear view mirror? Do they feature him more? I think that all that stuff is on the table. And the last thing that I think we should make sure we acknowledge about this deal for Miami, because as bad as the Rozier trade was, and I read a little blurb of mistakes, ESPN did an article on it, and I can't credit the writer, I apologize, but they had the Rozier moved, and they talked about how Riley, every time he's traded a first-round pick for anyone, they've gone on to be an all-star in Miami, and that included Goran Dragic and the players that they named, except Terry Rozier. It's like really one of the biggest mistakes, right? But Norm Powell was such a low cost move, and he can be such a good, interesting player for them. But if this doesn't go well, he also is an expiring contract. And I think at the deadline, that's going to have its value as well. So I think that all the way up into February, there's just different elements of Norm Powell being in Miami that can be either beneficial to Miami directly on the court, or in a forward-thinking way as a big expiring contract at the deadline.
I just wonder, as the Heat looked at this trade as they were exploring this, and I've given them some credit for surveying the landscape and seeing that this might be a possibility based on where the Clippers were at that time, which is what you have to do. You got to be one step ahead. They were in this case. I just wonder, as they're going through this deal, if they're just like we are, like, so what's the catch here? Like, well, I don't
exactly.
like they're really, it's just like the most low risk move I've ever seen. Because, like you said, he's expiring. You can move him at the deadline. He may fit great with you. You could extend him. He's a good guy. He seems to be ascending as his career goes forward. He's not worn down. He's not beaten down by the world. There's all these different, and he's also not going to submarine your coach and everybody else in your organization. So as you looked at all that, you're like, okay, I mean, what's the catch? There really is no catch. But I do think, like I said, watch that. It's going to take about three games for Heat fans to pick sides between players who are not picking sides between themselves. That's how this thing goes. All right, Greg, appreciate it. ShirtsByTheNet.com, Prize Picks, use the code FIVE. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.